This is what we're required to prove. I've got part A there, so let's just assume that we've done that, okay? I've got part B, okay, that f is increasing in this domain. Let's see. And now you've got this weirdo inequality, all right? Now, the first clue with the inequality is that they give you a very specific restriction, namely this. Okay? So, this is your, by the way, this is your first clue. You remember I talked about squeeze law, right? This is your first clue that this is not squeeze law. Squeeze law is about limits. This is about a certain interval of theta, right? Nothing to do with squeeze law, okay? Now, you've got this three-part inequality, and then you have to prove a three-part inequality, right? So you need to be thinking, okay, these have a connection to each other. Now, I think 3 or 4 of you saw it. 3 or 4 of you saw it, and you concluded this. As f is increasing in this domain, okay, therefore I can say this statement. Oops. Can you see what that means, right? For this new, much more restricted domain, which is within what you proved in part B, okay? What's going on here? This is just saying, look, I'm going up, right? Or something like that, okay? I just proved that from 0 to pi on 2, you're going up the whole time, right? So if you take a value at pi on 3, that's like somewhere like there. You take one of those values, right? And then you take one of these values, then any of those should be somewhere in between. That's all it means. That's all it means. Okay, now, if you saw this, you could evaluate. And that was not hard, right? Because, don't forget, f is not this. It's just the denominator, right? So you would do this. Oops, sorry. And this right here, this awful looking long mess, which is not that bad, it's just long, that was your first mark, okay? So you had to recognize that this comes from part B, and so you can evaluate it. And that's your basis for proving this inequality, for these particular values that they give you, okay? So you do a whole bunch of simplifying, all these sines and causes, right? You end up with this. That's where you end up. Now, excuse me, at this point, you've simplified as far as you get, right? Anytime, there's sort of like stages throughout the question, right? And you're like, look, I've reached the end of a stage. I've simplified as far as I can from this mess, right? At that point, you're like, okay, now where do I go? And the thing is, they've given you a roadmap. They've told you where you need to head, right? Now, this is not what you want to prove. This and this are upside down. And they're in the wrong spots. So you're like, well, what does that mean? Okay. Well, if I want some reciprocals, right, I should take reciprocals of everything, right? And that would work. If I take a reciprocal of this, I would get this value, which is what I want somewhere, right? If I take a reciprocal of this, I get this. And if I take a reciprocal of this, I get this. So all of the numbers are right now. That's really good. You are so close. But what happens here? Can you see what's going on, right? If you take reciprocals, reciprocals are a weird thing. I can say 3 is less than 4, which is less than 5. But if you take reciprocals, it's no longer true. Because a third is not less than a quarter, and a quarter is not less than a fifth. When you take reciprocals, a bigger denominator means a smaller number. So everything's been turned around, like so. Does that make sense? So therefore, on this line, even though it's weird, you have to write your inequalities backwards, okay? But that's weird, and it's not what you were trying to prove, so you put it round the right way, and there's the result. Okay? Now, you can see, they give you tremendous clues to get you here, right? They've told you all about it being an increasing function. In part 1, you got this result, which is going to lead you into part C. Okay, oh, sorry, I should say part 2. So, do you see how I got there? Does that make sense? Where were the 2 marks? Excuse me. This is the first mark, evaluating f at the relevant points. The second mark, I think, was here, just before you took the reciprocals, right? Is that right? Yes, that's right. Because once you do that, you're basically home. And that's a foregone conclusion. You get nothing for that. Okay?